So Amendment 6 is a really interesting issue. It's the first one on the ballot that is from the Constitutional Revision Commission. There's a few different interesting components because of that. The first one is the victim's rights language, which is commonly referred to as Marsy's Law. The second is the mandatory retirement age from judges, changing it from 70 to 75. And the other one is some deference issues with the state agencies. Obviously, this is really interesting how it's all together. Bob, what does this all really mean?
Well, this is one of several bundled amendments that's been offered by the Constitutional Revision Commission. Bundling refers to combining two or more measures into a single ballot initiative. Bundling has been challenged legally, but the Supreme Court has upheld bundling as long as the language is clear and concise. But that doesn't mean it's not confusing for the voters, because the voters are going to have to look at one issue that clearly requires a change to the Constitution to do, and that's the changing the mandatory retirement age for judges and justices. But the other two provisions can be done legislatively.
And in the case of Marsy's Law, or the Victims' Rights Amendment, it actually is already, most of it's already in statute. There's obviously a component to this of wanting to protect victims and wanting to make sure that they have, as much input into the process and their case as they can. But opponents of this are pointing out that it's very vaguely written. There's a lot of pieces of this that are going to have to be interpreted by courts at virtually every level of the process. It does give the victim or their family a lot of input and access to sort of decisions that are made by the prosecutor or by the judge. There's a significant possibility that's going to slow down the process. It's going to cost more for the taxpayers. But on the other hand, it does put in protections, sort of solid protections for victims. The only other thing it's really worth mentioning is that it does delete the provision that's currently in the Constitution that says that the victims' rights that are in statute are not to supersede the accused rights, which is really, the rights of the accused is the bedrock of sort of American justice system. So there are definitely some pieces of this that are sort of concerning in some ways.
Yeah, and another issue that's of significance to me is the provision that deals with how agencies interpret statutes and administrative rules. The way it works now is if a taxpayer or a vendor wants to challenge the way an agency is interpreting a statute or rule, they file a petition with the Division of Administrative Hearings, and it goes before an administrative law judge. The law judge gives deference to the state agency's interpretation of the rule or statute. In effect, there's a presumption that the agency is interpreting the rule or statute correctly. And then it's up to the petitioner to show that the agency's interpretation is either arbitrary or capricious or clearly erroneous. So that's the current standard. This would eliminate that standard. The petitioner would go into the proceeding without the presumption against them.
Do you think that would lead to more lawsuits and a higher, cost to taxpayers to deal with those?
I don't know that it would lead to more lawsuits. I just don't know.
There are a lot of problems with this amendment. I mean, the only part that actually has to be in the Constitution is the change in the retirement age for the judges. When you're looking at it, most of the negatives of this amendment actually outweigh the benefits. And for that reason, that's why TaxWatch is recommending we say no on this.
That's right.